CJP protest is over, education minister resigned, now you all go back to the studies and start preparing for our examination. So all these 20 days, and we can say all the students protest that was going on, we can expect a case study in ethics paper regarding this. On one hand, there was concern related to law and order. On the other hand, we had to protect the freedom of speech and expression, peaceful protest also. So we can expect such case study wherein you are supposed to take action, especially the police force was there at the protesters side, and what kind of actions you will take, course of action, what kind of ethical issues and dilemmas you are facing. So we can expect such kind of question. In past, UPSC has asked questions related to law and order and security situation. The question or case study related to Naxalite, if you remember, in 2025. So yes, briefly we can talk about the protests are going on. Jantar-Mantar paper leak has happened, and we can say that it has been found that some of the antisocial elements have infiltrated the crowd protester attempting to provoke the violence. This may have happened even in reality at Jantar-Mantar, those protests and 20th July, the violence that had happened. Then we can talk about social media, that police will forcibly disperse gatherings, such kind of rumors are spreading. Okay, some protesters have begun blocking nearby roads, damaging the public property. So they have begun this, trying to march towards the parliament despite the restrictions. Then there is excessive, yes, with possibility of clashes between police and protester. At the same time, any excessive use of force by the police could escalate the situation further, attracting nationwide criticism. Now, you are aware the right to peaceful protest is a fundamental right under Article 19, but you are also equally responsible for maintaining law and order, public order, protecting life and property, ensuring safety. Now, in this situation, you are asked ethical issues and ethical dilemmas, then stakeholders identification and their legitimate interest, and finally, as an officer in charge, what course of action would you adopt in that and justify your decisions. Let's try to deal with this particular first part. When you talk about such kind of incidences, you can give in introduction the context that recently such similar kind of protest had happened in Jantar Mantar, and you can give the context also. And here you can talk about the core dilemma. Core dilemma is related to balancing freedom of speech versus public order maintenance. So let's talk about the ethical issues first of all. So in this situation, if suppose the police officers takes excessive actions, disproportionate actions, and try to curb the peaceful protest, then it can be, you can say, ethical issue of suppression of peaceful protest, first thing. Then law and order issue may happen, which will result into injuries to the innocent people, peaceful protesters, especially they are the children or young, we can say, children. So this can be also one of the, we can say that law and order is, we can say, issue is one of the ethical issue. Then excess use of force, if suppose police is using, and it has been found that and even criticized at national and international level, such kind of excessive force by the Delhi police in Jantar Mantar incident 20th July. So excess use of force, there is protocol for police to use the force, right, in sequence. So first of all, they will give the warnings on the loudspeaker, then use of water cannons, and we can say that if lathi charge is done, then below the vest, and all these things are there, right? So excess use of force can be ethical issue there. Then rumors and misinformation is being spread. In that case study, it is mentioned, right? That may result into, we can say that chaos in that situation. The people may start believing that this has happened, misinformation, and they will start running here and there. It will result into, we can say, stampede like situation. Okay, so that will result into further injuries. Then accountability of NTA, yes. So there has been lack of responsibility on behalf of NTA, so there should be accountability of NTA, National Testing Agencies, by the government. Those officials who are responsible for leak of paper, they should be held accountable, right? Then human dignity is also involved. So those student protesters who are getting arrested, so they should be treated with dignity. There should not be any kind of, let's say, vengeance kind of thing against them. So this is kind of human dignity is also involved here for peaceful protesters. Then ethical dilemmas. So the police officers, police personnel on the ground, they face lot of dilemmas. Of course, they understood that they are the children, they are the young, we can say that people of the country who are going to be the future of the nation, and they are facing legitimate problems or grievances. So freedom of speech and expression on one hand, and on other hand public order, law and order issues. Second, whether to maintain restraint or take decisive intervention to deal or control the unruly mob, or we can say that the angry protesters. So maintaining restraint or decisive intervention. On the ground, these kinds of dilemmas are faced by the police, we can say, or law enforcement agencies. Then immediate control versus long-term trust. So police may take immediate strong action to control the, we can say, mob, or we can say protesters, but in long term such kind of excessive actions will result into loss of trust of people in the police institution. So that is going to be problem, we can say, dilemma. And obedience to the superiors. Now there can be orders from the superiors or even the ministers, we can say home minister, and obedience to that, or even let's say those police personnel, they are taking some kind of orders from the IPS officers, or we can say that DGP and all those people, and at the same time they have duty towards constitution and people. So at ground they are facing problem, no, how to use lathis on these innocent children. So that is, we can say that kind of ethical dilemmas these people will face on the ground. Now the second question, B part, is regarding stakeholders and their legitimate concerns. The students and families, they are having legitimate concerns in terms of, we can say, the paper leak that has happened. It has resulted into lot of, we can say, trauma. They have faced lot of hardships, right? And we expect that whatever the problem that has happened, they get justice. Okay, justice is required in this situation, because they feel that there is injustice has happened to them. Many of the students have done suicide, so their families will be expecting justice. So this is the way we should talk. Then peaceful protesters, they are again, we can say, students, their family members, right? They have legitimate grievances. Their grievances are supposed to be heard by the government and they needs to be addressed. Okay, so that is a legitimate concern, and they are basically peacefully protesting. So it should be allowed, peaceful. So it should be allowed, because in India we have freedom of speech and expression. It should be allowed. These are the legitimate interests. Police has legitimate interest of law and order maintenance. So even if they are allowing protesters, so it should be peaceful protest, law and order, right? Public order, protection to the public property, protection to the public property. This is the responsibility. So these are the interest of police, right? This is the way. Then government and NTA, so their legitimate interest is to hold the accountable, to hold those, let's say, guilty of paper leak accountable, right? Accountable. This is the way we should talk here. Legitimate interest, ensure transparency, and we can say that recruitment on the basis of merit, objectivity. These are the values they should promote. This is the way good governance we will talk. Then media, truth, ensure that truth is taken to the people instead of any kind of biased information, misinformation. Truth is very important. We can see that in this protest how the mainstream media was not able to show the truth on the ground, and many let's say freelance media persons, social media people, they have given the truth. And this is the way we should understand the interest of media. Then courts to punish, we can say that, guilty, and ensure that justice prevails. These are the interest of courts. We can say that no injustice is happening, excess force by the police, there should be investigation, and they should be held accountable. You have seen the videos where how the police has misused their authorities at certain incidences, slapping the women and all these things by one of the SSP. So ये सारी चीजें आपको लिखनी है वहां पर, right? Legitimate interest. Now, what should be the course of action? This is very important, and we can say that decisive aspect in your answer. So yes, there should be, we can say, graduated response to the escalation depending on the how situation evolves. Let's try to understand how we can write here escalation ladder. First of all, there should be verbal persuasion and warnings. So there should be clear communication, explain restrictions and possible consequences. So there should be announcement continuously from the police forces. Second, negotiation through protest leader. Identify the leaders. Already we know leaders were there for CJP protest. So negotiation should be there, engaging with organizers, understand their grievances, seek cooperation and voluntary compliance. So continuous talk should be there, and communication, what government is, let's say, trying to do, or their decisions, they should be continuously communicated with the organizers. Physical barriers and controlled movement. Use barricades, design designated zones and control routes to prevent escalation. This is, we can say, that management aspect from the law enforcement agencies. Targeted removal of violent persons. So identify and isolate individuals engaging in violence. This should have been done, rather than there's direct use of lathi charge on all, let's say, children. So that is problematic. Then temporary detention where legally justified. Detain persons involved in unlawful acts as per law and record evidences. This is very important. Evidence is important. Then minimum proportionate force as a last resort. Use only when necessary to prevent serious harm and grave threat to life and property. In this manner, we should talk about the proportional actions should be taken by the police forces. Proportionate use of force should be there rather than excessive use of force. And escalation ladder should be like this. Now, before using the force, we should consider following principles in mind. First of all, immediacy of the threat. Is there any immediate or serious threat to life, safety and property? Consider that. If there is no immediate threat, then peaceful protest should be allowed. Second, availability of alternatives. Have all non-force options been exhausted? With announcing, let's say, announcing on the loudspeaker, negotiation, barricades, and we can say control movement. If it is, let's say, exhausted, then only force should be allowed. Then risk to vulnerable persons. Will the action endangered women, children, elderly, differently able? Now, the way women were basically had given, we can talk about in that particular protest, they were affected, and this is the way police, somehow some of the personnel misuse this situation, misuse their, let's say, authorities and force. So that is problematic. Vulnerable person. Then proportionality. Is the response proportionate to the threat faced? So that was not major threat. Basically, you can see that it was not that violent protest as such. So थोड़े anti-social elements होंगे भी, but it was not violent. Basically, the police response resulted into a lot of anger, right? Availability of medical assistance. Is medical help accessible from, let's say, for those who may get injured? All these things should be considered before using the force. Okay, so this is the way we can expect question. And finally, the aim is to peaceful resolution, not punishment. Act with restraint, respect and responsibility. These words, these terms should be there in your answer. And yes, as a responsibility, we should have, let's say, police personnel are having both, let's say, responsibility towards their immediate seniors, following the order, but at the same time they have public duty towards people. So public interest, or we can say that overall commitment to the constitutional values, principles, these things should be given preference whenever they face dilemma like situation or the law is silent. Okay, so in this manner we can expect the case study in ethics part. We will try to provide similar kinds of case studies whenever different kinds of situations come into the picture or in news, because this is the way UPSC frames case studies nowadays, and we should be ready with dealing with such kind of case studies. So we will try to, use such kind of frameworks to give you a kind of model answers, and that's why these lectures, these sessions are very beneficial. So keep following these sessions on daily basis. Subscribe to Legacy IAS Academy YouTube channel and follow them on regular basis. Thank you.